Futuropia. This is a new game by the same designer of Power Grid. That was an economic game that was very successful. This also is an economic game, but it's different in the sense that it is even tighter than Power Grid. It really is an economic game which is about management and even micromanagement. It's about buying something for 4 instead of 3, or maybe should I wait and buy it for 5. It's about this really almost microscopic adjustments that then in the course of the game will lead to some more substantial difference. And the game is absolutely without any random factor whatsoever, so you may worry that the game is gonna feel stale, because once you figure out the formula that is always going to work, the designer was aware of that, and that's why the game comes with a lot of variants of setting up the game differently with different rules and different components, which means that it's entirely possible that a specific setup is solvable, but then, well, you just move on to the next setup, the next puzzle. The theme is particularly interesting. It is about a future which I actually believe is possible. We would have to change a couple of things in the way we're doing things right now, but it's not unthinkable. A future in which, in fact, machines are doing all the hard work for humans, and we are equitably sharing the benefits of that, so that when a robot replaces a human being, it's not a disaster, a catastrophe for the human being. It's reason to celebrate. Less work for us as humans and more time to, well, hang out on the beach, enjoy each other's company, read books, or even play board games. So in this game, basically, you will create an engine of resources in which first you will have people come into your area and building generators and creating more and more resources, but ultimately your ultimate goal is to replace those workers with robots, so that you will have at the end a self-sustaining system with robots doing all or most of the work and everybody else just hanging out and having a good time. Let me show you how the game achieves that. Each player starts the game with this kind of structure. Each player has a tile representing a living quarter. The living quarter will have a cost. This is 0 because it's a starting tile, but if you acquire other tiles later, then they may have a number there. For example, this one costs $1 to acquire, or this one costs 8. And then tiles have a number here indicating the number of energy points that it takes to keep that tile operational, and some tiles may also have a number here in a star that represents the number of victory points that the tile is worth at the end of the game. And also you see a number of slots here that represents how many people can live in that tile. How many people can live there and enjoy living la vida relaxing, unless they're busy working the generators. So in the basement of your headquarters, you will have generators. You have green generators for food and light blue generators for energy. The number there is simply the number of points that they produce. Here you can produce 3 food or 3 points of food resource, and this one is 1 point of energy. But I need to have somebody there to man or woman, or basically need somebody to human the machine, to make the machine work. During the game, you will acquire better machines that will produce more stuff, that will allow you to have larger living quarters with more people. Also, as the game progresses, you will acquire robots. The point is that as much as possible, you will want to have great generators in the basement, and as many of those, you will want them to be operated by robots instead of humans. There are tiles that have the symbol here, and that means that if you have that generator, then that space needs to be operated by a human, not by a robot. But ultimately, you want to have as large a self-sustaining colony as possible, with as many people up here relaxing and just enjoying life. There are several sources of victory points at the end, but basically the most important one is the number of people that live in your structure and do not have to work. resources. We have paper money. I know, sad. Everybody starts with $12. So we have these tokens here. They're action tokens. We'll talk about those later. Tokens to keep track of how many energy points and food points you have. And then here we have an area all important, super important indeed, which is where you acquire new tiles, new generators. There will always be 4 stacks of generators available. 2 energy generators, as you see here, and 2 food generators. The cheapest of the 2 stacks will be on the left side of this element here, and the slightly more expensive one on the right side. So for example, you see here we have generators. So this one costs 6, this one costs 7. As you can see, they do not produce the same number of energy points. This one costs 4, this one costs 5. Yes, and this one doesn't produce nearly as much. Well, nearly, almost as much, but this one takes less energy, less resources for you to operate it, because you only need a single human or a single robot. Here you will always need at least a human and then something else. The position of the stacks on the sides of that element is super important. But before we talk more about that, I want to show you pretty much all of the stacks of generators for energy, for food that you have here. Also other living elements that you will acquire during the game. They need to be stacked according to the cost, and that makes setup pretty laborious, trust me. So it's a little bit of a process. During the game, you will acquire generators, and you will need to pay the cost that is printed on the tile as modified by the position of this cube here. So for example, if this cube is here, see on this side it says +3, that means that this tile now costs 10. On this other side it says -3, that means that this tile now costs only 3. How does the cube move? When somebody buys a tile on the right stack, on the stack on the right side of this track here, then the cube goes up by 1. When somebody buys the last tile on the stack, in the stack on the left, then the cube is reset and goes down to 0. And this is how, as time goes by and people want the good generators now, the other ones go down in price. Heck, you may even get to a point where you can get one for free. Or even actually get one, quote-unquote, negative, I guess. Meaning you can get some money back. Now, important, so players will acquire generators, and when a stack is depleted, you will take the next stack in cost. So for example, when one of these 2 stacks is depleted, see the highest one is 7, then you need to replace it with the generators of that kind that have a cost of 8. When the 8 generators are depleted, then you have the 9, and then the 10, and then the 11, and then the 11, and so on and so forth. Basically, you always get the cheapest generator, the cheapest kind of generator still available from the supply. If the stack on the left is exhausted, let's go to food just for fun. If the stack on the left is exhausted, then you simply if the stack on the right is exhausted, then you simply replace it with the next stack available. If it is the left stack which is exhausted when there still are tiles there, then first you reset the cube, then you move these guys to that side, and then you add the next cheapest thing. The game is played by using action tiles. Each player has a set of 5 action tiles. They are these tiles here. And during your turn, things are pretty simple. You simply select one of your 5 tiles that is face up, you resolve the action connected with that tile, and then you turn the tile face down. You will get to flip them all back face up after you use them all, so that happens automatically. You can also choose to flip the tiles back up earlier if you really need them, in which case you simply pay a number of resources equal to the number of tiles that are still face up. A single resource is $1 or a food or an energy, which means it's really cheap actually. At least you're not gonna have these grueling situations in which, oh my gosh, I need to time things perfectly. If you realize that you need food and you don't have food because you already used the food tile, then well, spend a little bit of resources and you'll get the food earlier. So you choose, when it's your turn, you choose a tile, perform the action, and you're pretty much done. Now, what are the actions? This tile here lets you acquire 1 generator, but you don't have to. That's why you can also choose to acquire 0 generators. This tile is for food generators. So you simply buy, if you decide to acquire one, you buy a food generator and you place it in your personal area. And suppose that that's what I do there. Hooray! I don't have robots yet, but I want to man that one, or want to human. I want to operate that one with that person. After you buy a generator or not, then you simply produce food with all of your generators that are fully operated. If this is the situation right now, after I play this tile, I will produce 2 + 1 + 5, 8 points of food. I take tokens to represent that, and that's how it works. Then that is how I acquire generators for food and food. The same happens with the tile that gives me generators for energy, and then allows me to actually use them. And suppose that this is the situation. In this case, I produce 4 points of energy because I don't have anybody there. This one allows me to invite people. I can get 1 to 5 people from the supply. There is a generous supplies of wooden people and wooden robots. I get 1 to 5, and also this is when I can buy one of those elements there, of those living quarters, precisely to host the people that I have, because I need to be able, if I invite people, to have a living quarter for all of them. They may not be able to go, or I may not want them to go to their living quarter right away, but I need to have it in case they want to. So for example, what you see there is illegal because there aren't enough spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I don't have enough places there. I suppose that I have this one. That definitely covers that. Now I do have enough. So inviting people means that, again, you get meeples, you can add living quarters by paying the corresponding cost, and after that you need to feed everybody. So you simply spend a food point for each person that you have in your area. If you cannot pay for that, if you do not have enough resources to do so, then you need to pay money, and if you do not have enough money to do so, then you can take on loans. Basically, every time that you don't have enough money to do something, you can take loans and basically take $5 and one of these tiles. Very useful during the game, but in truth, you can definitely maneuver things around, especially by using early refreshing of tiles, so you never have to take loans because you have to pay them back, and you also have to pay interest every time that you refresh your tiles. Again, invite people, get headquarters, and spend food. Similarly, the style allows you to acquire 1 to 3 robots. Hooray! And say that I want to replace these 2 poor workers with robots. And then they can go up there and start having fun. Maybe they'll play a board game. Maybe they'll play Futuropia. How meta would that be? After I acquire 1 to 3 robots, then I need to spend energy, a point of energy for each point of energy required by the living quarters, plus a point of energy for each robot that I have. I don't have enough of those, I pay money. I don't have much money, I take on loans. Finally, the 5th action is get money, get a subsidy. By using this style, you will look at this track here, and it changes based on a number of players. Suppose we have 4, there's a cube here. So first you will take a number of dollars equal to the number under the cube, or the next number immediately left of the cube. After you take that amount of money, say I take the action now, I take $9, then you move the cube by 1. That means that after somebody else takes a subsidy again, then getting subsidy will give you 10 and 11 and so on and so forth. And this is how you get cash easily and quickly without having to take on loans, so you can buy generators, so you can buy living quarters. You continue like this until either a player has 25 people living in their area, at that point the area will be pretty large, or the most expensive food generator or energy generator has been deployed in that area and has been assigned. Whichever happens first, that event triggers the end of the game. All players will flip all of their tiles face up, with the exception of the player that triggered the game. Then the player does not flip the tile that they used to trigger the game face up. So the player will have 4 available tiles, everybody else 5. And then play continues as normal until either all players have used all of their tiles, or all players have left the game early, or any combination of those. You can leave the game early simply by saying, okay, I'm out of the game. This is important because if you do so, then the tiles that are still face up at the end of the game will give you victory points. At the end of the game, you will need to check that your living quarters are self-sustaining. You need to check that you produce enough energy and enough food to keep everything going, robots going, living quarters going, human beings being fed. If you don't, then you need to discard things until you reconcile things and you have a self-sustaining environment. Then you finally score victory points. You will score points for each person that lives up there and doesn't have to work, 5 points for each. You have a point for each surplus energy or food that you produce that is not consumed by your environment. Some tiles, as I showed you earlier, they give you victory points, so you scored those at that point. If you still have loans at the end of the game, each will lose you 3 victory points. Each tile that you have still face up gives you 3 points, and then any 10 resources that you have, so you total all your money, all of your food, and all of your energy, divided by 10, and that gives you a certain number of victory points. Each 10 resources, you get a victory point. Total all of victory points, and at the end, the player with the highest total wins the game. Futuropia is a bit of a strange beast. I play Euro games and I play economic games, and sometimes we think of them as a little cold, as a little dry. Futuropia is so dry it almost gave me a nosebleed. It is that dry. It has to be one of the most dry and quote-unquote heartless games that I played in a long time. And I'm saying heartless in a sort of neutral terms. Heartless as a robot is. You almost have to think like a robot to play the game. It is so much about these small adjustments that it really feels like you're playing with numbers more than anything else. The theme is fascinating, but it will soon fade into the background as in fact you're trying to optimize your engine of resources as much as you can. And it really is about playing and running those numbers a little better than the other players do. It's about them more than anything else. It is not so much about deciding what to do next, because in fact, which of the next tiles you should, which of the tiles you should use next, in most cases it's pretty obvious. I have a lot of workers and a lot of people and not a lot of food. Well, I'm gonna produce food, and now I have a lot of generators and not a lot of energy. I think I'll produce energy, and then I have the resource and I'll produce more generators, and so on and so forth. Pretty much each action leads you almost necessarily to the reaction. You respond to that produce some resources that makes it desirable to do the next thing, which causes a need for which you do that other thing. So basically the real choice that you have is not so much what should I do next among a large range of things. It's should I buy the thing on the left side or the right side? That pretty much is what the game is about. You will know when is the time to buy. You will even know when is the time to refresh a little early. The advantage that you have by refreshing your tiles early is so huge, and the price are relatively low that, again, you won't have the grueling thing, wow, right now I would need to produce food, but I have a problem. No, I'll just refresh the tiles and produce food. Again, just to elaborate on the fact that you will know what the next thing to do is, and you will usually be able to do it. Then it's just the decision of should I do it by buying something that costs 4 or costs 5 that produces 6 or produces 7. It's about these microscopic adjustments. And after a while, I had to tell you, this felt not all that interesting to me. At the beginning I was excited, how do we choose what to do? But then I realized that that was the heart of the game, and it just felt a little repetitive to me. And frankly, it took a while before all of these microscopic adjustments turn into something big. And there is, of course, the beautiful thing about games with no randomness is you really are the maker of your own fortune. The bad thing is 3/4 into the game you realize you are behind. You will be behind. There is no catching up mechanism. At that point, somebody who is ahead is there because they play the algorithm a little bit better. They have an edge that is almost impossible for you to overcome. So there is that problem. To me, the game is just a little too cold, a little too claustrophobic. The decisions that you have feel irrelevant. They're not, but they feel that way. And almost, to me, although there is no randomness on the end, I realize that you play with a better algorithm than mine. And at that point, I see the aggregate result, and I realize that all those microscopic decisions that didn't bring me all that much joy as I was making them did make a difference. So I didn't have as much fun as I was making those decisions, and at the end the result feels almost disjointed from it. Even if I win, I'm like, oh, look at that. Somehow, if nothing else, also if you win, well, it's a result of just one step over the other. You know you're gonna win, and so it feels a little bit anticlimactic. Doesn't mean that this is a bad game necessarily. It's just not a game for me. I think that definitely it has an audience. In my group, I have several mathematicians, professional mathematicians that come to game night. I think they will love it. I haven't played with them because I'm not that masochistic. I'm not that into self-inflicted pain, which would be what if I, a normal human being, would experience playing it with professional mathematicians. But I can totally see them enjoying this and being happy about that in the way mathematicians are happy. I'm kidding, friends of mine who do mathematics, I envy you and you're great, and please keep coming to game night. On one side of the table you may play this one, I'll be playing something else on the other side, but that's okay too. I think there is a room for Futuropia in the collection of many gamers, not in the collection of everybody. Not everybody will be pleased. I'm not particularly in love with this game. Somebody else will love it, and even somebody that I know, and I'll enjoy seeing you enjoy it. I don't know, however, the Futuropia is a game that I will play very much, if ever, in the future.